Buenos dias, mi gente. It's your boy Big Body. I whispering today because my loud done clipped the beard mic.
Big Body for the people I'm mocking.
Today, I calling out myself. Hear me out. I have done this sin, this crime, plenty of times before, and I never realized how closely it resembled the very things that people do to me. Today we doing shoulders, and we had a buffet of different shoulder exercises that target both the lateral as well as the push mechanism, I don't know what you call that, of my shoulders. Things like military press, lateral raises, and a half rep on top of that, and of course, the dreaded handstand push-up. My tip for today is it's okay if you recruit a little bit of your chest in order to do the lateral raises. It is not worth it trying to raw dog lateral raises, especially if you're doing a heavier weight, because you can impinge your shoulder as well as just wreck your shoulder in general. I have done it before. It is not something that I'd recommend. Also, when it comes to the handstand push-ups, one of the things that I found to be really helpful is to take off your shoes and post up on a wall, on a bar, on something to balance yourself rather than potentially falling on your face in front of the whole gym. Handstand push-ups are one of the most athletically looking exercises that you can do inside a gym. You will definitely be that person in the gym after you do this, if you do it correctly. If you don't do it correctly, you will be that person in the gym that fell on their face in front of everybody in the gym. And then you have to move gyms, like you just have to, or die. Also, doing a weight check-in. I am currently, I think, at 214 as of this morning. Of course, you know, I weigh myself every morning. I do not recommend that to not only people that get triggered by their weight, but also just in general, unless you are using your weight check-ins to monitor your bodily trends, not to gain a micro understanding of every time you lose a little bit of weight or you gain a little bit of weight, because the number on the scale could be a very inaccurate indicator of your overall health, of the way that you look, of your weight breakdown in general. I like to take my weight because I like to have a macro view of the trends that I am on. Am I trending in gaining more muscle, and am I trending in losing fat, as that is my goals? And given that I wear an Apple Watch as well as use a smart scale, like the Withing smart scale, I can get like very granular, aggregated data for months on end, which I find to be rather helpful in understanding my progress and appreciating how far I've come, but definitely can be a very unhealthy thing to do if you're monitoring it on a micro basis. Especially sometimes, like after I eat like a really big meal the night before, or if I fall off my fasting schedule, I could end up getting rather depressed when I look at the micro changes that my body does on a regular basis. Sometimes even I'm doing very well in my workouts, in my nutrition, and I gain a little bit of weight and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I have to understand that the way that the body matures when losing or gaining weight, losing or gaining muscle, it's not a straight line down when you're trying to lose weight. It's sometimes a more peak and valley type of thing on a micro level. Anyway, scent of the day. Lacoste Essential. This is a very good warm weather fragrance. I want to say the top note is watermelon. I believe so. I'm not actually too sure on this. I haven't worn this one in a while. The Lacoste Essential, as you can see, I haven't even used too much of this, and I've had this for over 6 years at this point. You don't need much, and it packs a punch. It's very invigorating, very inviting, very tropical. It's not a fruity watermelon, it's more of a musky watermelon, if that makes any sense. I believe it's a watermelon. I'm pretty sure it's a watermelon. Don't make any watermelon jokes. So I'm sure everybody's seen the recent controversies surrounding YouTube's golden boy, Mr. Beast. There's a lot of different criticisms that I can levy at Mr. Beast, and I already have inside this video. However, one of the things that I have unfortunately taken part in, and I regret actually, is engaging in physiognomy. I'll put the definition on the screen, but physiognomy essentially is judging a book by its cover. And the way that we are judging the book by its cover is very much rooted in the things that I face as a black man. There are particular connotations when you think of a black man. This has been an effort over centuries, years upon years, to foster a particular image of black masculinity that is truculent, that is savage, brutish, not smart, criminal. All of these things are synonyms of black men. There's particular ways in which we assess people from a glance, and that's natural. That's schema theory. That's looking at a particular thing, and due to historical engagement with that thing or person or idea, you as a human being try to naturally ascribe particular traits to that thing, human concept, what have you. On the one hand, it's natural. On the one hand, it is something that helps us not fall victim to very precarious situations. But on the next hand, it can be very, don't want to say crippling. It can be something that prohibits us from being able to think freely about something and engage with things that we are unfamiliar with. There's a show that I like, Lie to Me, which looks at body language. And essentially, Tim Roth is the protagonist. And what he does is he leads a firm of people who are experts in lie detection. And by lie detection, they mean looking at someone and how they act and looking at the dissonance on what they say. It sounds all good and dandy, right? And the show is actually incredible. I love it. However, I had to really wheel back the fact and constantly remind myself that this is fiction. There's absolutely no true basis and universality for body language as well as facial expressions. In different cultures, different things mean different things. And that's kind of where I'm getting into when it comes to the way that we judge a book by its cover, especially when it comes to the way that I've been judged as well. You may have heard the term highbrow. Well, that's in reference to physiognomy. It's in reference to looking at the way that someone's face is shaped and then deriving intelligence or lack of intelligence from that. And a lot of these theories have been debunked already, thankfully. However, that hasn't stopped it from leaking and seeping into our collective consciousness as a society and as a species, because we still do try to look at people and derive a particular character assessment or assumptions based on them. And it's not always right. There's a nuance here, however. I'm not going to tell you that if someone is being shady or shifty on a regular basis, that means that they aren't up to something nefarious. However, I challenge you to challenge your own conception of what you mean by shady and shifty. What about this person is ringing on your register that you should be alarmed? Because sometimes we equate some implicit biases that we have as human beings that we've collected over years of societal training and conditioning to associate particular people and particular behaviors with particular sentiments. It is something that has helped disenfranchise people as particular behaviors and features are associated with a lack of humanity. You could go all the way back to the Third Reich, or you could go back to the transatlantic slave trade. You could even go to today, the way that we engage with marginalized groups, the way that physiognomy has a legacy that we don't even see on a regular basis. We just call it a gut feeling. We just call it intuition, is a way that we have sorted people into particular camps, either worthy of empathy, worthy of a second thought, worthy or not. And that's how I began to look at the way that I analyzed Mr. Beast. I'm sure you've seen his thumbnails before. He, of course, is advertising the kids, and he almost has a scientific algorithmic calculation as to what faces will resonate the most with that audience, right? And that has resulted in him producing a very soulless face, some may argue. The apogee of this was, of course, when he cured blindness, which, of course, he didn't actually cure, but he cured blindness. And the face that he used in that picture, in that thumbnail, everyone was chiming in on how you can see that there's no soul behind those eyes. It's a funny thing to say. It could be a true thing to say. But the reason why we're saying it has some issues. And I have done this before. I have looked at someone's countenance and then said that that person rubs me the wrong way, just off of that basis. And while I will accept that this can be a second sense, this can be something that hereditarily and evolutionarily I have aggregated from my ancestors to protect me, it can very well be something in polite society and in the modern world that has hindered me from engaging with people that could actually be worthwhile. Engaging with experiences and concepts that can actually be worthwhile. And to take this even further, this can very well be attributed to concepts, beliefs, and schools of thoughts that we immediately write off simply because it does not align with what we find to be familiar. Spoiler, but there are some things about conservatism that not that bad. There are some things that liberals can potentially look at conservatives with and actually derive some value from it. Definitely the next way around as well. Not in a both sides centrist type of way, but more so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Actually taking time to individually analyze every principle, every issue that is raised by different parties, different persuasions, different cultures is not a bad thing. Of course, it's not a reasonable thing all the time if you're trying to make very quick assessments and judgments on things. It might not be easy to constantly be listing the pros and cons and looking up the history of just about anything. But here and there, it may lead you into some places that are actually worthwhile. Much in line with my last video on Black penile envy. If you ain't watched that yet, you definitely need to because it is a doozy. But one of the things growing up that I had to deal with was people teasing me about me having small ears. And I vividly remember being in grade school and this gal made a comment that stuck with me because at that age I didn't have any retort to it. It absolutely owned me and I was left speechless, drowning in a raucous sea of laughter from my peers, which is equal to social death at that point in grade school. She said that if your ear's this small, imagine how small your pee-pee is. And that was such a own. I ain't gonna lie, like it just did numbers. Like numbers were on the board. It was so good. I couldn't say anything to that. I was just like, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, you cooked me that. I ain't gonna lie. At that age, but that has a lot of implications for today's conversations because you realize that these things have no bearing on actual physical attributes. The corollary of this is, if you're tall and you're skinny, you're carrying a meat cannon. And you're all inside the comment sections that have had tall, skinny partners, you all let me know, has that just been the case all across the board? I'm willing to venture not. But all of this relates to this concept of physiognomy. Yeah, so I challenge you, I dare you, double dog dare you today to actually engage with something without trying to figure out what it is. Instead of feeding into the knee-jerk reaction to attach this new thing to something that you already know, take it at face value. Take it neutrally if you can. I mean, as best as you can. It's very impossible to do it, but try it and see if you find any value in it. Remember, just because someone thinks especially different from you, granted, if they're invalidating your humanity, I mean, probably don't need to listen to that person that much. However, look at it from the context and perspective of this has no bearing on me, and I have everything to gain from trying to understand what engenders this particular type of person and their perspective. Why did they end up there, and why did I end up here?